Monster Bash, and you know, it's extra. It's 20 years special in two ways for me. Of course, the first Monster Bash was 1998, so my first time meeting Veronica was 1997 at the FanX convention. So this 20 years of 1997 to now is doubly special. So isn't it great to have Veronica here again? Special. It makes it an extra special weekend, and she is family. She's our family.
I feel that way. Yes. It's lovely to be home.
Yes.
That's how I feel.
Yes. So your last bash was, if I'm not mistaken, was it October 2014? I know you've been at some other conventions.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
But October 2014.
That's
and
right.
You and Martine Beswick and Martin Stevens was here, and we were right here. It seems, you know, hard to believe that was 3 years ago.
I can't believe it either. Yeah.
So let's talk to Veronica Carlson about, of course, her wonderful career and what a wonderful person she is. Obviously, first, absolutely. I know that recently, with Roger Moore passing away, you had appeared with him.
Yes.
And could you tell a little bit about, you know,
yes.
what we're throwing out?
Yes. This isn't easy. I loved Roger. He was one of these guys that was so easygoing. It was convivial. I mean, everybody on the set was his friend. He made everyone so happy. And I remember working with him on The Saint. And he'd done a long run of The Saint, as you remember. You must remember. And he would now and then throw a spanner in the works, so to make everyone laugh and to liven things up and to keep everyone entertained. And he didn't want to get bored. So his first joke was really awful, and I had my father, Clifford Evans, was playing my father, and he was going to be frozen, so he'd been kept. And of course, Roger did it, didn't he? Freeze a jolly good fella. In the middle of the shot. So Freddie said, "Cut! Thank you, Roger." Roll the camera, and they planned another scene, and he dared Roger to do it again. But Roger was known to be this kind and caring person, and he would try to get me involved with other things and introduce me to other people. We got on very well, and he introduced me to the head of NBC's talent situation, and took me to a Japanese restaurant, so we'd meet this man, a man called David Tennant. And there we were, sitting on the low stools and having it was a beautiful place in London. Bamboo curtain, you know, one of these that you could just open like they do. And next door we heard some ladies come in, and the first thing we heard was it was transparent. It was like a grass paper stretched across. "Have you seen Roger Moore lately?" "Oh my goodness, yes, isn't he handsome?" And they went on and on about Roger. Roger was doing this thing. And they said things maybe they wouldn't have said if they'd known that anyone could hear them, let alone Roger Moore himself. They would have shut their mouths. It was quite risque. And he couldn't resist anymore. He said, "I've got to stop." And he said, "I've got..." And he got up, slowly opened the door. He said, "Ladies, thank you so much. You've made my day." And if they hadn't been sitting really way down there, they would have fallen. They just froze, and we hardly heard another word from them. That's who he was. He was lovely. Yeah.
All right. Well, how about we open it up for questions for Veronica Carlson, and we'll start with this gentleman right here.
Any memories of Terence Fisher?
Yes, Terry was always in the wars for something. He used to play chicken with traffic. Nobody knew why. He always thought he could outrun a car, when of course he couldn't. So when he was directing Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, he was hobbling around with a cane. He's a lovely, lovely man. Rather brusque, direct and to the point, and that's why he started the first shot of Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. I was sitting on the stairs in costume. Peter was to my left, and Terry was standing there in front. And so these two started a conversation. I mean, like I wasn't there. And Terry leaned into Peter and said, "Peter, have you given much thought just how you'd like to kill this girl?" And Peter said, Yes, dear Terry, I really have. And you know I would like to stab her with a scalpel. Good idea, but how will you do it? He said, well, Terry, I'd rather like to hold her in an embrace, and he did this with his hand. Hold her to me as if I'm going to embrace her and turn her hand into her stomach. Wonderful idea, Peter. We'll do it, we'll do it. I still wasn't there. They hadn't said a word to me. So I said, as Terry departed, trying to be important and part of everything, Terry, may I die with my eyes open? Certainly not, darling. It'll never get past the senses. And off he went. Off he went. Terry was lovely, but he was always with a cane. He died not long afterwards. I think he was playing chicken again. I don't know. He was a very loved director, very popular.
Okay, more questions for Veronica Carlson? Yes.
Last night, when you were performing in Saxio,
Yeah.
You didn't have any dialogue for your role, but you portrayed such anguish. I actually thought, are you feeling poorly?
I'm so glad. I was supposed to be weak and ailing, you know.
Was that kind of wordless acting part of your initial training or something?
Oh yes, I think when you're saying your lines, you're feeling your lines as well. And the story was so beautifully read by Zach. When I read the story, I could hear Zach reading it even though he was not there. And you feel those words. The words are beautiful. And he was wonderful. I mean, he's spectacular. And it's easy to be affected by him, you see. So we rehearsed it a couple of times upstairs. And the more we rehearsed it, the more we felt it. And I could just see this woman on the death's door. I think we've all been there a few times ourselves anyway. And it was easy to fall, you know, to feel ill. And that's I wanted to come across. The only time I was really nervous was when he was describing a 24-year-old woman. And I had to throw back. I thought they're going to laugh. They're just going to laugh. They can't help it, but it went smoothly. Nobody was laughing. I was so grateful to everybody. I'm glad you noticed it. Thank you. Thank you.
More questions? Okay, this gentleman, then we'll get back to it.
Veronica, you did a horror film in 1975 titled The Ghoul
Yes.
with John Hurt.
Yes.
I don't remember exactly how many scenes you shared with him, but what was the experience working on the set of that film?
I'm sorry, would you repeat?
What was the experience like working on the set of The Ghoul?
It was very different. It was lovely working again with Peter. But he changed, you know, after the death of his wife. The Peter I knew on the set of Frankenstein that Must Be Destroyed was a different Peter. He was as caring and as loving as ever, but he was also very remote. And he would, as soon as a scene had been shot, he would go retire to his dressing room, which he used not to do. He used never to go to his dressing room. He would sit with the actors and read with them and do things like that. So he withdrew. We had a scene in The Ghoul that was very powerful. Peter always had a picture of Helen, his wife, somewhere on the set. Whichever set he was working on, there was a small portrait of Helen somewhere. And of course, his wife in the film was also called Helen. So he had to describe his wife's death. And in this scene, he picks up his wife's photograph, Helen, describes her death. For some unknown reason, Freddie asked him to do it over and over, about 6 takes in all. Well, that brought everyone. Peter wrote down and he said, I can't do this anymore, Terry. He said, Freddie, he said, Freddie, I have to go. I can't be here, Freddie, I've got to go. So he went off the set, he was in tears. And I looked round. Everybody was crying, the cameraman, the lighting man, everybody, I was so choked I couldn't speak. Freddie's a very kind director, a very sympathetic director, and the reason I feel he did it was for the best of intentions, because Peter, the more he did it, the more he gave, and it became absolutely, enormously effective, and at the cost of Peter's health almost, really, because he was in a bad way. it was worth it. Do you see what I'm saying? Freddie got what he wanted, what he knew was right, but it was at a great cost. But the rest of the cast was wonderful. John Hurt sadly passed. He was in this lovely film with Harry Potter, when he was Ollivander, and Gwen Watford, a fine actress. The cast was stellar, and of course Alexandra Bastido left us, of course. John Hurt's gone. And it was not quite as happy as the Hammer were, but I was glad to work again with Peter, very, very glad, in spite of his sadness.
Okay, here's the gentleman in the back.
One of the, I know sometimes, actors will tell you practical jokes on each other. Do you have any stories like that where Christopher Lee maybe did something to crack up the whole scene, had to do it over again?
Do I have a story?
Well, Christopher Lee, maybe jokes and takes, but they didn't go well. Maybe he wanted to take the scene over.
You know, I have to say no. Peter and Christopher were intensely professional. No matter they were incredibly professional. Everybody was. Not only that, we had a 6-week shooting time frame. So you did everything on the first take. If nothing went quite right, you did it on second take. But if a light bulb exploded, you had a third chance, right? Because that's how it was. So everybody was totally professional. There was no performance, no giggling, nothing. And even when Christopher had to put those contacts in his eyes, the red, intensely uncomfortable, as you could well imagine, and they would make his eyes water and water. He did it without complaint. That was his role, and that's how it was. That's how it all was. Nobody ever did that. And it's strange, I've never thought of that till you just mentioned it. There was nothing that. I know the cast of one TV show I did, they tried to make us break up. I had to open a bottle of beer, or a can of beer, whatever it was. And they'd shaken it up while we were off set, right? So when I came to it, it went, I tell you, ladies, beer sets your hair beautifully. When they put my hair in rows to make it dry and curly. The curls stayed for the first time ever in my hair. But they waited for us to crack up with Ralph Bates. We did not crack up. We went straight through, and you could almost feel a sigh of disappointment.
Veronica, this is more of a personal question, but when you're away from the conventions, and if you're just at home, what would a typical day be like in the life of Veronica Carlson? What, from morning to night, what is your day like?
It's never the same, because my husband passed away last September. So that's left me in a minute of chaos or two. So I'm still in that moment of chaos. But usually I choose to work at my artwork, because that's what I went to college for when I was 16. And I've drawn all my life. And that keeps me balanced. And I'm starting, I shall go now, open my doors and go out to some lovely galleries where I live. Introduce my work to them, because I was always on Hilton Head before, and I shall introduce my work to Bluffton. And I've got a wonderful pair of ladies who do the most incredible print works. I've got some work I want to put into prints, and I would like to show my work in a gallery. I would like to get portrait commissions again, because I used to get portrait commissions all the time when I was working on Hilton Head, and that's all I did, one after the other, portraits. And that's what I want to get into, and I know I will eventually. It's just getting there, and it's always, I'll do that tomorrow. I know I'll get there tomorrow, but tomorrow hasn't come yet, and so I'm waiting for the day. But in the meantime, being here is like having a dose of tonic. Thank you all very much.
And we love it too.
When you were on stage in several of the movies, is there anybody, perhaps a young man, that would make your heart flutter when you're like, oh, that's a good-looking man? Or
What,
in
my grown-up years or my early years?
Early years.
It was Dale Robertson. I had a thing. I saw him on screen, Wells Fargo, when I was about 11, and I thought he was the most handsome man in the world. And oh my God, there was nobody else. He was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. And I was fortunate enough to meet him. I knew I would one day, I didn't know how. He came to Hilton Head for a golf benefit, and I bought the tickets. And I was asked to do some modeling of some clothes for one of the stores there. And I met his wife, and I met Dale Robertson after all that time. And I told him about like when people come to me, saw my film, when I was 11, I know exactly how they feel. And I said the same to Dale Robertson, and I hear my own words coming back to me. And that's why I understand so well how much these films mean. And he understood, and he was very gracious. And we had a lovely, lovely chat. And by then I was, oh, please introduce. And I was introducing everyone to Dale Robertson, and I had to back off so while everyone else talked. And I was a bit pissed off about that. And I've also noticed how patient you all are. If I get caught up with somebody talking to them. So I love to hear what the stories you tell me. And that everyone is so patient and so gracious. And it's a thrill for me to hear your stories. They're so like my own.
That was an excellent point, his question. And then you said in my earlier years or so, what would be the second, the continuation of that as years went on?
Oh my goodness, Sean Connery. Oh my goodness, I did. But the funny thing about Sean was, I was in the restaurant in Pinewood. I was having a snack for lunch. I was working on a film called Magnificent 2, and I was in, I don't know what I was wearing, nothing special. I think we were doing drill practice outside. We had a sergeant come from one of the army camps, teach us how to, with a real rifle. So I was probably in, exercise gear, I don't remember. And I was ordering, and I felt this tap on my shoulder. And someone said, excuse me. And I said, oh, just a minute, I'm just ordering my lunch. And I asked the waitress to repeat what she just said, because I'd had this interruption. And she repeated it. Then I ummed and on, and I said, yes, I'll have that, whatever it was. And he tapped my shoulder and said, excuse me, I'm talking to you. I thought, who was that? I tell him, it was Sean Connery. So I said, oh, I'm sorry about that. He said, and he started talking, and he was so nice. He had his hand on my back. And he was filming, the volcano set was there. And I knew that was a real set. And he said, would you like to come and watch the scene being shot? And I knew those were close sets. I said, I'd love to. So I went to see him work. He was doing a helicopter moment with the green screen behind. And which of course I watched later in the film. It was fantastic. And he got his head stuntman to take me around the volcano. When I saw all of that, I mean, that was something that nobody would. And then I accidentally bumped into him in LA. He was in the back of a restaurant, and he took me to see Finian's Rainbow. I thought, this can't be happening. But we were just walking down the streets of LA, no one looking at him. He was just nobody. He was just what everybody else. There was no. I've been out with people who've had to run away from people, But in LA, it's a different thing. He's a super guy. So I was glad I met him. I've had a little thing for him ever since, but I never told my husband that.
Okay, more questions? Yes, right here.
Which actors or actresses influenced you when you were younger?
Would you repeat that?
Which actors or actresses influenced you when you were younger?
Oh, what actors and actresses influenced you when you were younger?
Influenced me. That's something. Well, certainly Christopher and Peter did. I learned a lot from them. They were very gracious. They'd read through the scenes with you and get you going, so you know how to respond to them with the way they took you in hand. I'd done a lot of stage work in college, so I was pretty intuitive. But I think, and John Hurt, he was a great influence. I wished I could have worked with him on more films, or a longer scene with John. That was a very intense moment. You just absorb it from them. They're so good. You are the person they expect you to be. And it was a growing experience all the time with anyone I worked with. They were all in their own way influential. Freddie Jones was wonderful. And when I was afraid, he came up to me after the scene was shot when I was with the knife. He said, darling, you really made me feel you were afraid. Lovely. And that was such a confidence builder from such a fine actor who I saw not so long ago at a convention. It was lovely to see him again.
Of course, the horror of Frankenstein was just 1 year after. So what was the feeling for you having done what you feel think, is you said if you had to pick one movie, that's the one that you would choose, Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. So making this next Frankenstein movie, obviously, I'm sure you enjoyed it and working with the cast, but how did it feel to go from the Peter Cushing Frankenstein to the Ralph Bates and the whole storyline?
So different. Well, I thought it was an adventure, that I thought it would be a wonderful adventure. But Jimmy, thanks to the director, brought a touch of bathroom humor into it. And I took Hannah incredibly seriously, as we all did. You know, we were talking earlier about whether any breakups on the set. No. Jimmy was a mischievous director. He was an excellent director, but he was mischievous. And he always kept us laughing. And it was very hard not to have breakups with him because he was a... Anyway, I remember he was always doing something a little bit, I thought, a little bit rude, you know, something shouldn't be there. Didn't belong with Hannah, you know, these rude finger gestures and suggestive remarks. And he knew I didn't approve. And I remember lying in bed in one of my scenes, I was supposed to be asleep. And I said, I might as well stay here. And rather than have my stand-in come, I mean, she's just going to lie in bed, I might as well lie in bed. So he hopped in bed beside me and just tucked us both up together, and we had photographs taken. He was a mischievous, playful man. I adored him. You couldn't not love him. I mean, goodness me, but he was a fine director when he was working. And he and Ralph got on so very, very well. Ralph was lovely to him. And I wanted Kate's part in that movie. I always got the goody two-shoes.
Okay, more questions? Yes, Randy.
Any memories of working on Old Dracula / Vampire?
Any memories of working on Old Dracula and...
Yes.
It was also known as Vampire.
With David Niven?
Yes.
Yes. When I was introduced, I was wearing this big batwing headdress and a silver gown. And they introduced me to David, so he came across to me because we had to dance together. He trod on my toe. I mean, he trod on my toe. So I bent down. I mean, it was a reflex, actually. It hurt. When I stood up, he was doing this. I looked him in the eye with my toe. So there was me with an ouched toe and him with a bloodshot eye, with tears running down his face. That was a very good introduction. So we both laughed about it, no harm done. He was a lovely man. We danced together. It was a nice film to work with. He was a good person to work with. His career was stellar, wasn't it? Yeah, it was lovely again.
Okay, Zach in the back.
Hello, Veronica.
Hello, Zach.
Hello. I was wondering about any memories of you and Hooper, the priest from Dracula's Risen from the Grave, Mary and Matthew, Michael Ripper.
Yes, oh my goodness, you've named some fantastic names, haven't you?
Yeah.
And Rupert Davis, I called him
Rupert Davis, yes.
Yeah. Yes, he took me into London, Rupert did, to meet his sister. We had a lovely day in London together, we had a day off. And Michael Ripper, I used to watch them rehearse. I wouldn't go to my dressing room, I'd watch them rehearse. Michael Ripper and Barry Ewing. Barry and my boyfriend in the movie. And Barbara, I'd watch her work as well. And I used to marvel at these people. I watched them in the dressing room, the hair and everything, and come out and be different people altogether on the set. It was fantastic. It was a game of let's pretend, you know. And I remember the kindest thing that Christopher did, he did a lot of kind things, but the very sensitive, most sensitive thing he did for me, I was supposed to be thrown to the floor in the cellar scene, and I had to look up and see him and be mesmerized and terrified and frozen. And Freddie had said to me, "This is your eye line, darling. Look at my hand, that's where you're going to be looking." And the deep voice from behind, in the darkness I couldn't see into, was the voice that said, "I'll be her eye line, Freddie." And Christopher stepped forward and acted as if he were in the scene with me, reacted and glared at me as he would have done. And I was so nervous, and until then, and that made that scene wonderful for me. And I have never forgotten it, and I've always mentioned it everywhere I've gone. And apparently I learned much later that somebody did it for him when he was a young actor. Did the same thing, the same generosity, and he'd never forgotten it, and that's why he always remembered and did it for others. So I was so grateful. Yeah.
Was there ever a time that was ever discussed, or as a possibility, that you would work with Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee beyond the films that you did work with them in? Like, was there ever any talk of like another teaming? You know, could be another horror movie or?
No, I think I really pretty much walked away at one point because all the scripts that were coming in called for nudity and, you know, something like that. Everything I got was like that, and it got old and silly, and I didn't want to be a part of it. And no, there wasn't. But Peter always wanted me to go and have dinner with him in Wits. So he always wanted me. He said, "Please come to dinner, darling." But life took me over, and I could never go, and it became difficult to travel. It's difficult to travel across England sometimes. It is not like the interstates over here. And I never did get to go, which I regret very, very much, because even in his very late years, he was. But because of my art, I've been able to do good things with my artwork, and I donated a portrait of Peter to help raise money for, you know, for the church, so he could have a window place. Done things like that. And that's where my art plays a good part in my life. You know, I could create something and donate it for a good cause. When Ralph passed away, I did, and it helps both ways. It helps me because I love to work, and it's a benefit to somebody that it means something. I feel I'm in the right place at the right time at those moments.
You truly are a blessing.
Yeah, but I like to think I've got to help. People are so good to me.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and okay, right over here.
You mentioned Michael Ripper.
Yes.
He played a lot of great characters on screen.
Yeah.
What was he like off screen? Was he a proper gentleman?
Oh, he was just the same. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And he used to, he was an engaging gentleman. And Peter and Christopher always used to say, "Oh, we're starring in another Michael Ripper movie," because he was always in the movies. You know, he was always a fantastic man to watch, and he was always a joy. And he came to one of the conventions, and I did a portrait of Michael Ripper, and David Clemenson very kindly put it on the back cover of Little Shop of Horrors, and I was so proud of that. And I gave that to somebody to say thank you. And, sadly, on the second time he came to a convention, he wasn't there. He was physically there, but he was bewildered. But he got a standing ovation from the audience, and he didn't know why. He was bewildered, but he thought it was wonderful, but he couldn't quite remember why. He was bewildered, but I thought it was a lovely thing. I think he knew inside, but didn't know how to express it. You know, he was just lovely.
If I'm not mistaken, that may have been the Monster Rally, 1999.
Yes.
Yes, and Christopher Lee was there.
That's right,
and,
yes.
And Joyce Broughton,
That's
Peter
right.
Cushing's secretary, was there.
That's right, yes.
And his dear friend, of course,
Yes.
Joyce. And, but I remember meeting Michael Ripper and told him how much I said I've always enjoyed your work.
That's right.
And he smiled and said, "Thank you, that's sweet." And that was pretty much it. I said,
Yes,
"It was
that's
real
right.
nice to meet you."
That's right.
And he was very polite, but he really didn't have a whole lot to say, but very nice.
Yes, I think he had Alzheimer's. He had a lovely wife who was very kind and gracious and looked after him so beautifully. But it was a sad way to go. It was cruel.
Well, in celebrating the 20 years of Monster Bash, the best convention in the universe, thanks to Ron.
Yes, thank
Ron
you.
has created a convention. It was his vision, this was his thoughts that set things in motion in 1997, that look what it's done for us. It's brought us together as, Bash family, and Ron has made it possible and to spend time together with friends, and of course, people who have blessed our lives. And Veronica Carlson is definitely a blessing for all of us. You know.
Veronica Carlson, I promise you that. We love you. Look at this, stand up.